you drunk? Is you had enough? Are you here looking for love? Ooh, got the club going crazy. All these but my eyes on you.
This is For the Love of Sports on Fox Sports 980, 95.9 FM, as well as the free iHeartRadio app. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be tuning in. You want to get in touch with the show on Twitter, make sure you follow us at WOFX980, at ZachFS980, ZACHFS980. Like us on Facebook at Fox Sports 980, at Zach Harris Sports. You want to call into the show, 518-690-0980, 518-690-0980. All eyes are on you. Odell Beckham Jr., who chose to sign with the Los Angeles Rams. Now, through the rumors, through the thick and the thin, apparently the Rams were an option all along. But for most of us on the outside world looking in, not inside the brain of Odell Beckham Jr., we're questioning and guessing and giving our best educated guess on where Odell Beckham Jr. would land. You know, a lot of us wanted to see him in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers and maybe being that final piece over the top. For me, what I really wanted to see was Odell Beckham Jr. team up with a gunslinger opposite of a true number one wide receiver. So I wanted him with Devontae Adams or him with Stephon Diggs or now him with Cooper Kupp, which works as well. You have a gunslinger mentality in Matt Stafford. You have an offensive guru. And up until a couple of days ago, it looked like he was going to be a third, fourth option. But now with Robert Woods gone, that bumps him up. Van Jefferson right now is going to be the current number 2 spot. But eventually it's going to be OBJ's job. And the talent is still there. You take a look at OBJ, and he's only a year removed from a 1,000-yard season. Now, obviously, he had dealt with injuries last year with the Browns, and even though he received 1,000 yards in 2019 with the Browns, they weren't in an efficient impact on the game type of yardage that you would come to expect. You know, he's a far cry from those first 3 seasons with the Giants where he received for over 1,300 yards and had, on average, you know, right around 12 touchdowns a season for those Giants in the first 3 years. But Odell Beckham is still an elite talent. And I think too often he gets labeled as a typical diva wide receiver. And let's be honest. Name a player in the NFL that doesn't have an ego. You don't become that good at your job without having an ego. Because when there's bad days, you need to remind yourself, I am the greatest player on planet. And I think too often his ego, his character, his passion gets mistaken for something that is harmful for a team. And yeah, it didn't work out that well for the Browns. They had a young Baker Mayfield back in 2019. You know, you had a big star like Odell Beckham Jr., who was projecting to be a top 5 wide receiver in the league, potentially a top 3. Of course, you had to force feed him the ball. They had to work on ways to get Odell Beckham the ball, get him involved. For whatever reason, Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham never got on the same page. You know, Baker realized that the attention that Odell Beckham Jr. gets, even if he doesn't get double covered all the time now, he still opens up the field for other players. Because you take a look, and for his career, Odell Beckham averages 14 yards per catch. That's tops in the league. He is still a deep threat. So even though he didn't necessarily have the impact on the box score, he did have an impact on other players on his team and really helped open up other things. But sometimes stuff like that goes unnoticed. If it goes beyond a box score, if it goes beyond stats, sometimes our eyes don't necessarily see what they need to see. In this narrative that Odell Beckham's a crybaby and this and that, and he's a horrible teammate and he's a cancer to the locker room, I'm not buying that. I am not buying that. The media, the fans, it's all clickbait stuff. We are not inside that locker room day in and day out. What we see on the sideline, the whole kicking net fiasco thing where back with the Giants, he proposed to the kicking net. Yeah, that could be a little over the top. Did he play into the media a little too much? Yeah, absolutely. But what's different between Odell Beckham Jr. ranting and raving up and down a sideline and Tom Brady ranting and raving up and down the sideline? Well, I'll tell you one thing. One, he's a quarterback. Two, he wins games. And being a quarterback, you have more of a impact on a game than a wide receiver, if we're being honest. But at the end of the day, I truly believe Odell Beckham Jr. is concerned about one thing and one thing only. That's winning. He's passionate. Not only does he want to win, winners want the ball in their hand. So when Odell Beckham sees the Browns struggling this year, he's frustrated because he's not getting involved. He's not getting the ball. He's not being able to help his team win. And I just told you, it goes beyond the stats. But when a team is frustrating the way that, or when a team is having a frustrating time winning games, like the Browns did this year, it's tough to see, hey, I haven't received the ball. This team isn't winning. And I know my talent. I know I can help this team win. I just need an opportunity. Sometimes that passion can get mistaken for locker room cancer. And I just do not buy into it. OBJ is not a locker room cancer. He is a passionate, high character type of player. And by high character, I mean he has a character that it's hard to put it in words. He has a character that doesn't necessarily mesh with what you, the fan, or you, the media, would like him to portray himself as. He's outgoing. It's his character. It's his diva-ness. Ask any wide receiver in the NFL, are they a diva? Yes. I once heard, the further away you get from the ball, the more diva-ish you become. So you got the offensive linemen, the humble bragging. Then you got the tight ends. They're a little diva-ish. And then you got the wide receivers, divas. Same thing on the defensive side of the ball. You got your defensive tackles, your defensive ends. Then you get out to your defensive backs. Are the defensive backs not waving their finger every other play, even if they had no impact on that play whatsoever? Yeah. But at the end of the day, what helps you become great is having that drive, having that passion, having that ego, that fail to be last type of mentality. And I think OBJ is going to a good situation where Sean McVay has very high character leaders such as Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Darrell Henderson's bought in and done his job. You have Jalen Ramsey. Remember, Jalen Ramsey used to be this huge issue. Have we heard anything of character assassination about Jalen Ramsey since he entered via trade with the Los Angeles Rams? No, we haven't. But what was he labeled in Jacksonville? A diva, over the top, cancer to the locker room. Have you heard that with the Rams? Have you seen that with the Rams? So sometimes what the media and the fans portray isn't necessarily indicative of what that person's character actually is. And notice there wasn't this type of talk until Odell Beckham's father released that video. And now all of a sudden he's egotistical. He's a cancer to the locker room. And there was these rumors that he didn't talk to anybody in the locker room, outside of the locker room, anywhere. And he didn't do anything for anyone other than himself. Notice all those came out after this Odell Beckham father Twitter release video. Because it's easier to label somebody than to actually find out what's really going on. You're not in the locker room every day. You're not at practice every day. You don't know what is going on with Odell Beckham and his teammates. Two of his Browns teammates, and now obviously one's from college who had the chance to play with Odell Beckham with the Browns. Jarvis Landry has talked about how Odell Beckham's one of the greatest teammates he's ever played with. Greg Newsome from Northwestern, who got drafted by the Browns, talked about this is a straight lie. Nobody's ever said anything about Odell Beckham Jr. being a bad teammate. That they're not in the locker room. They don't see it. And guess what? When you go to those people, the fan base, the media that write the articles, where's your sources? They're anonymous sources. You know why they're anonymous sources? Because they don't exist. You need ratings. You need clickbait. Odell Beckham Jr. is not a cancer to the locker room. You don't know he is. You just guess and assume because you see that passion on the sideline, that quote unquote crybaby mentality, crying for the ball. Nah, winners want the ball, son. Winners want the ball. At the end of the game, I want the ball in my hands to win. When I go play pickup basketball on Thursday and there's a game-winning shot to be made, guess who wants to take it? I want to take it. Now, am I going to go steal it from my teammate? No. But I'm going to say, hey, look, if you see me open here, give me the ball. I know I can make it. Does that make me a crybaby? No, that makes me passionate. That makes me competitive. That makes me want to win at all cost. I think too often we get lost in the madness of the media portraying a certain player the way that he necessarily isn't. And Odell Beckham Jr. at all cost is not a locker room cancer. He's competitive, he's compassionate, and at all costs he wants to win the game no matter what.